Hello and welcome to People and Power. I'm Barbara Serra. We interrupt our China series to bring you a special report on Cyclone Nargis and the regime without a heart. On Friday, UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon said that the leader of Myanmar's military dictatorship, General Tan Shwe, had finally agreed to let all aid workers and supplies into the stricken country to provide assistance to the more than 2.5 million people in need. Well, that's 21 days after the cyclone made landfall, 21 days and thousands of dead. People in Power sent a journalist undercover into Myanmar to report on the constitutional referendum planned by the military junta to legitimize their rule. She arrived in the country, formerly known as Burma, the day after the cyclone struck. Well, during her time there, she posed as a tourist, someone merely caught up in the devastation just like everyone else. Even so, she was still monitored by the security services. In order to protect those Burmese who helped her file this report, we can't name her or show her face. From the heart of the devastation in Myanmar, we ask, is this the straw that will finally break the back of Myanmar's brutal military dictatorship?
At around 6 o'clock, it started to rain and the wind picked up. Everyone left their huts and went into stronger houses, but the wind was blowing from all directions. All houses started falling apart. Everyone was scattered. The raindrops were big and painful. People started to hang on to whatever they could. Around 7 in the evening, all the houses started flooding. I lost my husband, my daughter, and my granddaughter. My daughter was in the 9th grade.
When Cyclone Nargis hit Myanmar's Irrawaddy Delta on May 2nd, no one could know that the storm would change their lives forever. By the time the storm had dropped, over 100,000 people were dead or had disappeared.
In the town of Bogale, we found a small monastery where people from nearby villages had taken refuge.
There were around 300 people in our village, and around 50 people survived. I lost my wife and 2 children, 2 sons. I was the only one who survived. I could swim and my wife could also swim, but she did not make it. I survived by holding on to a piece of wood, and I landed on an island. If you go down a few miles, there are many floating bodies. It is difficult to go by boat. We have to push the bodies away with a bamboo to move ahead.
My brother-in-law died along with his 2 sons holding onto a post. His wife got separated from him and she was holding on to another post. Her face was badly damaged. The next day she met a group of people with an empty barrel. That's how she survived. From a village of 30 houses, only 5 people survived.
In the short time that we were in Bogale, many others came, each wanting to tell their story. 7-year-old Kokyo lost his father, sister, and niece.
At our village, when we ask friends or relatives, we don't ask how many people died. We ask how many survived. The answer is 1 or 2 from each family. The rest have just disappeared.
People wanting to talk to us, to share this information, is unusual. The tight grip of Myanmar's military junta means that even talking to a foreigner could be construed as treason. I've been to Myanmar before, but this is the first time I heard people say, "I don't care." They say they don't care because they have nothing left to lose. The government had done very little to help these people. Most of the survivors from neighboring villages had come to this town in search for food and medicines.
We came to the town, but we did not want to go to the government relief center because all you get is a paracetamol and rehydration solution.
Even a week after the storm, we could see that the villagers had not received any aid from the government. Yet, until the last few days, the military junta has stubbornly refused aid from the international community. They've been reluctant to allow foreign aid workers in, particularly those from Western countries.
The dictatorial government fears that the information from inside will be known outside if they let foreigners in.
This underground opposition leader asked us to hide his identity. He's been jailed and tortured by the regime several times in the past.
The second reason is control of the people. When there is a foreign power within the country, people will look up to the foreign power and foreign aid. They will have less respect for the government. People won't want to rely on the government anymore, so they fear they will lose respect from the people.
The government has been using history to justify its tight control over foreigners.
The most important thing is that Burmese generals, they have this colonial mentality, post-colonial mentality. Burma was under the military, the British rule for more than 100 years. So they use this colonial trauma to justify their rule. So the military always say they enslave us for more than 100 years. Now they are here again to enslave us.
But the government has no hesitation about using its own propaganda machine to show that they are self-sufficient and they are reaching out to the people. Smiling generals and grateful people were all over Myanmar's state-run television. But there were numerous accounts of authorities taking aid back from the victims once the cameras had left. Another opposition leader who agreed to meet me is known by his code name Phoenix.
We have records of government giving aid for TV and taking away at the same time. For instance, the regional commander gave packets of biscuit to each family of victims, and as soon as he passed, the township officers took it back. It was in Sachi Kanado in Rangoon division.
Wherever we traveled, we saw very little military support. Along the roads, a few military convoys, but none carrying aid. In fact, they appeared empty. In one town, a helicopter landed and people rushed towards it, hoping it was food. But it had come to pick up a general. What we did see all through the delta was desperation. Villagers had taken refuge on the only land still above water. The Irrawaddy Delta is the rice bowl of Myanmar, but all around us was the smell of rotting rice. With no food aid coming in, farmers desperately tried to salvage whatever they could. 38-year-old Soo Kin borrowed money to plant her rice. Now it's all destroyed. Soo Kin has no idea how to feed her 3 children, let alone pay back the loan.
I have lost everything. My family survived, but we have nothing. Nothing to eat, nothing to wear, no water to drink. This is a terrible life. And now we'll probably die of cholera. Yesterday, I stood on the middle of the road waiting for a car thinking, you can run over me if you want. I don't care.
This is all that is left of her home. In a stark contrast, when an earthquake struck neighboring China on May 12th, the government acted swiftly. Close to 100,000 soldiers and police were mobilized to help victims of the disaster.
One key difference is in China, those who are in charge are civilians. They have built their legitimacy on helping the people, even if it is perceived. But China has developed so much. Okay, they continue to commit human rights abuses, but they still pay a lot of attention to what happens to the country. In Burma, it is a military, not civilian. From the top down to the bottom, it's the military that makes a decision. They have never learned anything about economy. They have never learned anything about environment. They lack these experiences. I think that is the key why the Chinese responded rapidly, immediately after the earthquake struck. And of course, in Burma, we have all the generals making unreasonable, unbelievable decisions.
After the break, we continue our journey into Myanmar's cyclone-stricken Irrawaddy Delta, where the people have been abandoned by their regime.